Hello everyone and welcome to this video tutorial in which I'm going to be running through the format of the 3 Eduqas A-level law exam papers. So in this video we're going to be taking a look at exactly what questions to expect on the different exam papers, how many minutes you should be spending on each question, and also looking at some tips on how to answer scenario versus essay type questions. So first of all, let's consider exam 1. So exam 1 for Eduqas is called The Nature of Law and the English Legal System. And on this paper, you've got a variety of questions that you need to answer, and different techniques are involved for answering each. Now I will show you on the next few slides what these different types of questions look like on the actual paper, but just as an outline for what you need to be doing in the exam on this paper, you're going to answer a 5-mark explain type question, another 5-mark explain type question that's related to the one above it, and you should be spending about 9 minutes on each of those 5 markers. Remember, timing's really important if you want to maximise your chances of getting the higher marks. You don't want to spend all your time at the beginning, particularly on lower mark questions, and then running out of time when you get onto questions that are worth more marks, like this one, the 25 marker at the end. So you've got 2 5 markers, then you've got a 15-mark advise type question. This is where you'll be given a little fictional scenario and you need to advise the characters on the issues that are in it. And I suggest you spend 26 minutes on that question. You then have a 10-mark explain type question and you should spend 20 minutes on that, followed by a 15-mark analyse and evaluate question, and you should spend 25 minutes on that one. So if we take a look at section A then, these are some examples of 5-mark questions that you could be asked. Remember, you want to be spending about 9 minutes on each of those. So in section A, you have to answer a total of 3 questions. You have to answer questions 1 and 2. You don't have a choice there. Plus, I'll show you on the next slide, either question 3 or 4, which is your scenario type question. So you can see here from this paper, I've just taken a screenshot of a past paper. For question 1, you need to explain the literal and golden rules. Obviously, you want to be including cases in there. And then question 2, explain what is meant by the rule of law. So they're your short answer questions. Still on section A, you must answer a scenario type question, an advise question. And for saving space on this slide, because the scenarios are quite long, I've just chosen question 4 here, but you can notice that you had a choice, there was or. So you had to answer question 1 and 2, which were the 5 markers. You then got a scenario 3, or if you preferred, this scenario 4. So you're going to have to read the scenarios quite quickly to decide which one you think you can answer the best. So this particular scenario, again, it's just from a past paper. You can see here that this question is about statutory interpretation, because you're being asked to use your knowledge of statutory interpretation to advise Olga. So you have to read this fake act of Parliament about, the Diesel Fictitious Act and work out what Olga's done and whether she would be guilty under that offence or not using statutory interpretation. So to answer that well, you'd need to be looking at how the literal rule would work with this particular scenario, how the golden rule, mischief rule, purposive approach to advise your character. So what you'll notice about this section A is questions 1 and 2 were about statutory interpretation, and this particular scenario is about statutory interpretation as well. So we're still on exam 1 here. We've done section A now. We've done our short answer questions and an advice scenario question. In section B, you must answer either question 5 or question 6. So you've got a choice here, and because they weren't scenarios, I could fit them both on this slide. So you would have a scan and think, do you like the look of number 5 or 6 more? Notice that there's an A and a B, a part A and a B for each question. You have to answer both parts of whichever question you choose. So in this particular example, question 5 is about judges and the judiciary, and question 6 is about the jury. And what you'll notice about the parts of each question is that the first one is an explain type question worth 10 marks, but the second part is an analyse type question, which is worth more at 15 marks. And that's because analysing and evaluating the law is a harder, it's a higher level skill than simply explaining or describing what the law is. So there's an explain for A and an analyse for B in whichever of those questions that you choose. So we're moving on to look at exam 2 then, again for Eduqas A-level law. And the exam 2 paper is substantive law in practice. And the exam 2 paper is where you get scenarios on 3 different areas of law. There's actually 4 areas of law in the exam paper, but in your particular college, your teacher will have taught you 3 areas. And of course, you must answer 3 questions on the 3 areas you've studied. Don't have a go at human rights if you've not studied that in college. Hopefully that's obvious. But in this exam, you're going to answer 3 scenario questions. And you'll notice that you should be spending 45 minutes on each. And each scenario is worth 25 marks. So again, just like previously, you need to be watching the clock and making sure that you spend an equal amount of time on each of your scenarios. You don't want to spend ages on one and then run out of time for another. So watching the time is really, really important if you want to be getting high marks. So on this slide then, I've done what I did for exam 1, and I've taken a screenshot of exam 2 section A just so you can see what it looks like on the actual paper. So on exam 2 section A is on the law of contract, and if you've been studying contract in your college, you need to answer 1 contract scenario from a choice of 2. So you'll be given question 1 or question 2. And they are both scenarios about contract law, and if you've been studying this area, you would pick the one you like the best and you would spend 45 minutes on it. You can see here from this example, we've got Daniel, a photographer, and you're being asked to apply your knowledge of legal rules and principles on whether there's been a breach of contract here. And this one was all about whether an exclusion clause was incorporated into the contract or not. On this slide here, we're still looking at exam 2, but this is section B, and I've included one of the law of tort questions. So section B happens to be law of tort, and again, you've got a choice of 2. You would answer question 3 or question 4. And this one that fits on the slide is about Eric working for Sweets R Us, and you're being asked to advise Gary about the law of tort, and this particular scenario involved a potential negligence claim. So again, if you've been studying tort, you would pick either 3 or 4, whichever looked nicer, and spend 45 minutes on it. And then still on exam 2, section C, just to show you what it looks like. Section C is criminal law, and again you would choose either question 5 or question 6. And this particular scenario involved non-fatal offences against the person and any defences. So you would choose 5 or 6, whichever you preferred the look of, and that was in section C. If you've been studying human rights law, that would be in section D, and again you would choose either question 7 or question 8, whichever you like the look of best. but I've not included that slide in this video because I didn't teach human rights when I was teaching law. I taught criminal, contract and tort, so that's why I've included those on this slide. Now, when you're tackling your scenarios, your 3 scenarios on exam 2, to maximise your chances of getting the highest marks, I advise that you use the IDEA format. And if you've watched any of my video tutorials where I look at model answers for particular questions, you'll already be familiar with the IDEA structure for your essays. So you would start by I, identifying the offence that the defendant might have committed, D, defining the crime or the issue in the question, E, explaining the law with all the cases that you can remember, and then A, applying the law back to the scenario. And if you follow those steps, you're going to maximise your chances of getting the highest possible marks. And as I say, there's lots of examples on my channel where I go through this format with you, looking at scenario questions. So do have a look at those if you're not sure. And now moving on to the final exam for Eduqas A-level law, exam 3. And exam 3 is called Perspectives of Substantive Law, and this is the paper where you are answering essays. So exam 2 was scenarios where you're advising characters about a little fictitious story, whereas an essay is where you're being asked to analyse and evaluate an area of law. But exam 3 has the same sort of format as exam 2 because you're going to answer 3 essay questions depending on which of these areas you've studied in college. And you can see that just like with the scenarios, they're all worth 25 marks, and therefore you should spend 45 minutes on each. So Eduqas is quite nice because exam 2 and exam 3 is quite easy to remember what it is you have to do. 3 essays, 45 minutes on each. So just like before, for exam 3, I've taken a screenshot here of section A so that you can see exactly what it looks like when you're going to open your paper. So section A on exam 3 is the law of contract, and you're given a choice of essays. So you can answer this one or this one. Don't answer both, okay? You've only got time to do one. So one of them is asking you to analyse and evaluate on discharge of contract, and the other one is asking you to evaluate the law on offer and acceptance. So probably most of you would like this one best. Remember, I do have some model answers on my channel that go through good answers to these questions, but you would answer whichever of those you prefer. Section B is tort law on exam 3, and you would answer either this one or this one if you've been studying tort. So here you can choose between Occupiers Liability Acts or consent and contributory negligence. So again, have a quick scan, think which could I answer the best on, and obviously answer your favourite. Section C, criminal law. Your choices here, you need to talk about the law on bail or talk about the defence of duress and necessity. So again, you're evaluating the law, but whichever one you know the most about. And again, there would be a section D, human rights law, and you would choose whichever human rights question you like the best if you've been studying human rights law. But again, I've not included that in this particular video. And just as a little tip for you, when you're answering exam 2, the scenario questions, you should use the IDEA format. Whereas when you're on exam 3, the essay questions, you're basically, if I was going to sort of simplify it, you're being asked, what is the law? Is it good or bad? And if you answer those 2 things well, with examples and cases, you should be getting a nice answer. Now I've got lots of examples of evaluative essay model answers on my channel, so please check some of those out, and I colour code them as well so you can see where I've done what we call the AO1, which is where you've explained what the law is. What is the law? That's AO1. Is it good or bad? That's the other evaluative mark that you get where you're evaluating the law. I've colour coded that red. So you're saying what the law is and then evaluating whether the rule is fair or not, whether there's any problems with it, whether there are any suggestions for reform that could be made. So I've outlined the 3 exams that you get for Eduqas A-level law. I hope that this video has been useful to you if you are studying law with Eduqas. I do have some other videos that are specifically for Eduqas on my channel which you can look for, but if you're with other exam boards, OCR, AQA, you'll also find some videos for those exams on my channel also. If you're finding my videos useful, please like and subscribe to my channel because it really helps me to make new content for you. So thanks for watching and good luck with your exam.